Childhood Obesity, presentation by Ambra Martin. The objectives of this presentation are to define childhood obesity and what is considered or defined as overweight, complications of children being overweight, what can be done to help reduce the occurrence of children being overweight, how to implement change, what was discovered during this presentation, and the conclusion. The CDC's definition of being overweight is a child with a BMI or body mass index at or above the 85th percentile in comparison to other children the same age and gender. Obesity is defined as a child whose BMI is at or above the 95th percentile. For the World Health Organization, or WHO, childhood obesity is a serious public health challenge of the 21st century. In the past decade, childhood obesity has affected 12.7 million children and adolescents ages 2 to 19 years old. Children who are overweight are more likely to become overweight adults, and being overweight can influence multiple areas in the child's life, including cognition, achievements in school, and achievements later in life. The CDC's website outlines some serious complications of childhood obesity. Some of them include asthma, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and depression, to name a few. As cliche as it sounds, children are our future, and if we want them to live healthy lives, we have to educate them about the importance of healthy eating and regular physical activity and exercise. So now that we know how important this is, how do we go about educating our children, and who does the education? Having children of my own, I have learned quickly that children are little versions of ourselves. They are like sponges that soak up everything they hear and see, and a child's parent is the first teacher a child encounters even before they enter preschool. But what are parents teaching their children? They're teaching them the exact same thing their parents taught them, including unhealthy eating habits. Have you ever heard, you better clean your plate? We have starving children around the world. I'll be the first to admit I even fell into this pattern with my own child, and I realized that we have to make sure we're not forcing them to overeat, trying to compensate for or doing the same thing that our parents did for us. Teaching good eating habits start at home, but unfortunately we can't visit everyone in their home. So, what's the next best place to provide this education? In the words of Dr. McStuffins, time for your checkup. Parents are usually good about bringing their children to their yearly well-child checks. For those who don't, we can always provide the education during sick visits when it's appropriate. For instance, if you have a child who comes in that has open wound that needs sutures, that's not the appropriate time to attempt to teach about proper nutrition and exercise. During a child's yearly well-child check, the child's height and weight are recorded to track growth and development. This is when the BMI is calculated. That's where nurses come in. The first steps of Cordior's 8-step process for leading change is to create a sense of urgency. By presenting the facts and statistics about childhood obesity to nurses who have children, we create a group of change champions. The nurses who have children will be on board because they realize how important complications of childhood obesity are, and how important it is to provide the education to parents at a level that they understand and they can implement into their regular lives. This group of motivated nurses / teachers / parents will be empowered and help to educate our patients, our parents of the children who need this education. As creatures of habit, no one likes change, including nurses, doctors, all healthcare personnel. We have our system of way of doing things, and we understand and we like the way our flow works. So we need to make sure that this implementation will not interrupt the normal clinic flow, and the nurses and the doctors can continue to add this information in and make it a part of their regular routine. Some examples of some ways that this change could occur is suggestions such as reading materials for specific age groups, such as comic books for teens, seek and find, with themes based on healthy eating and exercise. So that way, this reading material can be passed off to the child. This material can be shared with the parents, just educating them about the importance of making sure that child is eating the healthy food, making sure that child is being active and physical activity, getting at least an hour of exercise in or physical movement in every day. Also, educational videos in the waiting areas about obesity in adults and children, because, like I said earlier, children are products of their environment and they're products of what their parents are teaching them. The parents are eating the way that they've been taught to eat, or the way that they know to eat. So we need to make sure that we're educating parents on healthy eating so that they can educate their children how to eat healthy. For instance, I know in our waiting area, majority of the time, HGTV is playing with the home improvement, but what about having some information about healthy eating for adults, healthy eating for children, healthy exercise tips, and ways to incorporate moving more, getting out more, which is as a family or as an individual, because we all know how subtle messages in TV commercials and magazines, we may not think we're hearing them, we may not think we're really paying them attention, but we really are subconsciously hearing them and taking heed to them. For instance, we know in October, all the toy ad commercials will start coming on because they know that the children are starting to think about Christmas and they want to get those commercials in that's going to encourage the kids to want certain toys. We want to do the same thing with just educating our parents and our children about how important it is to eat healthy and exercise. There are plenty of studies around childhood obesity. For instance, one study that was performed in Sweden actually created a mobile app where parents could download, put in the information about how their child was eating, the different exercises or physical activity their child was doing, to basically make the parents more aware of making sure their children are eating healthy foods, making sure their children are getting the amount of physical activity needed to decrease obesity or the incidence of obesity or being overweight. Another study in a Lebanese school actually created a program where they actually incorporated healthy education about nutritional facts and physical activities into the actual classroom lessons. So for instance, if the class was a mathematics class, there was information embedded into the course that included maybe cutting up an apple into a fourth and you're getting 1/2 of an apple, that kind of thing, so that the children were actually hearing about healthy eating while they were learning about mathematics. Another study showed how obesity can affect school achievement and cognition, and they actually proved how an increase in physical activities, it raised the math scores, it improved memory, and in improved problem-solving skills in children. Another study showed how the lack of sleep increases the occurrence of obesity. In conclusion, I've discovered that although childhood obesity is a well-known problem, it is a road less traveled. It took a long time to get healthy food choices in fast food restaurants such as McDonald's. Subway has, been on a long path of trying to get everybody to increase their amount of fresh fruits and vegetables and whole wheat bread. But it's taken a long time to get that information out and actually see it into action. And we don't talk about it or even write about a lot of childhood obesity. A lot of the articles and research that I found was either less than 5 years old, older than 5 years old, and you actually had to pay for a subscription to have access to the articles, which I understand that research costs money, but imagine how many healthcare dollars we spend daily on the complications caused by obesity. So instead of spending those healthcare dollars on complications, why not share the information so that we all can work on improving such a huge influence of or decreasing the incidence of childhood obesity. In conclusion, knowledge is power. So we need to make sure we're sharing the knowledge that we have and making sure that it's benefiting the people who really need it the most. Here are the references I used for this presentation. Thank you, and I hope it empowered you to become an advocate for childhood obesity.